why skipping detention might be a good idea. When I was in high school, I slacked off a lot. My junior year, my math teacher was pretty upset by this. Once during a parent-teacher meeting, he told my mom that I wasn't doing as well as I could and called me lazy. My mom agreed and stated that she wouldn't blame him if he pushed and punished me to work harder. From this day on, he did exactly that, always questioning me before anyone else and always sat next to me during exercises. This is when my classmates started realizing that he was a little obsessed with me and started teasing me about it. Right before Christmas break, he threw us a surprise party with chocolates and mock champagne. He poured me an extra glass and congratulated me for doing better. I drank the first glass he gave me, but not the second because I'm diabetic and had already had too much chocolate. During the next class, I felt extremely sick and almost fainted. I spent the rest of the day in the nurse's office and chalked it up to eating too much candy. A few weeks later, I failed a math test. He became extremely angry and yelled at me in front of everyone. The look in his eyes chilled me and I cried. He gave me detention but scheduled it hours later than the usual time and said he would personally be there as well. When I showed up, it was getting dark already and I noticed I was the only student there. Something felt off and a feeling deep inside my gut was pushing me to skip. Right when I decided to skip, I look over and see him. Why skipping detention might be a good idea. As he walked towards me, I was getting nervous. I told him that I had an emergency and I had to go, but I would email the school and reschedule later. Right after this, I ran off. As I was running away, he yelled at me and told me that I had to obey him and come to detention or he'd call my parents. At this moment, I didn't care. The feeling in my gut kept growing, so I sprinted to the bus and went home. I was afraid that he'd call my parents, but my parents greeted me normally when I got home, so I assumed he didn't. The next day, I was expecting to get an earful, but he wasn't there, and as weeks passed, he never came back. Then a shrink came to our class and asked if he'd like to talk about our math teacher, but no one knew why. Fast forward a few years later when I became a teacher and started chatting with my coworker. I mentioned his name, speaking to her about my weird, bizarre teacher and how I skipped attention. That's when one of the oldest workers there went pale hearing his name. It turns out a few days after I skipped attention, my math teacher was arrested for downloading child you-know-what from the dark web. He also had tons of snuff videos doing terrible things to children and teens. Now I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't followed my gut instincts and stayed for detention that day with just me and him in that classroom.
So when I turned 13, I had a birthday party. It's no big deal. I mean, I was just blossoming, turning into a woman. And so I remember my mom was like, no one's allowed in the rooms. Everyone needs to be outside. If you see anyone inside, you need to tell me. I was like, oh my God, Booma, you don't need to pop off. I get it, Booma, come on. I remember I saw 3 adults walk out of my room. I didn't tell my mom, but let me tell you why. Because I was like, maybe they're designing a gift for me. So the end of the day came, no surprise present came. I'm not mad. Are you mad? Because I'm happy. So we started cleaning up and then we went to go clean my room in case. Oh, the best part is coming! There was a voodoo doll under my bed. It looked exactly like me. I remember there was one needle on its left eye, another needle on its heart, and it was laying on like a ratchet green leaf. And then next to it, there was a note that said, "This is all gonna be mine," in cursive. So then my mom started doing research. Found the voodoo doll. My mom did some research and we found out that someone was basically trying to do evil to me and harm me. Like, I appreciate you counting me in. I personally, I don't want to be voodooed, but thank you. Thankfully though, we had some cameras in the house, so we were about to see who was behind this. This is the best part. We checked the cameras and the 3 people that I saw walk out of my room, they were strangers. My parents didn't invite them, they didn't know them. So what my dad did was he screenshotted the footage and then he posted it on Facebook and he was like, does anyone know who this is? So we ended up finding them, contacting them, whatever. And we found out they work for this company that does witch stuff. And someone was paying them to do all of this witchery stuff on me. No, I'm fine. What about you? So we asked them, what is behind all of this? What magic are you trying to do? Who paid you? Contacted the witches. The witches basically told him that it's better to not talk about this on the phone. They then told my dad that the only person they can release information to is me. Long story short, I had to meet the witches at an alley by myself. By myself. I pull up, I feel like a whole ass horse. I'm about to shit everywhere. So then I come across the witches and I remember they were looking straight at the ground. And I remember I was like, hi. And they were like, we cannot look you in the eyes because then the curse is gonna be ours. I remember I started asking them questions like, just the usual, like, why'd you make a voodoo doll of me? They told me that the whole point behind this was for me to eventually turn crazy and be lonely forever. Bitch, I'm already crazy and needy as f. Unfortunately, they said they couldn't tell me who was behind all of this. I remember they told me how to break. So apparently couldn't tell me who was behind all of this. I remember they told me how to break the curse though. They told me to put the voodoo doll in a wooden box and set it on fire. And they gave me this like nasty hot green juice, but apparently it killed the curse.
Do you like the color purple? Well, at one point wearing it was punishable by death. Do you want to know why? Emperors Julius Caesar and Augustus made it illegal for anyone other than the emperor to wear the color purple. It was, in fact, punishable by death. This decree was reversed, if my research is right, by Emperor Nero. And you're probably asking yourself, why did they make that law in the first place? Well, as many of you know, purple is seen as a royal color, and one of the reasons it was seen that way is because the dye was very difficult and expensive to source. Early dyes were made with shells of either snails or seashells, and you'd have to grind up a ton of these things even to get a small gram of the dye available. So obviously now it is legal to wear purple, so you purple people can wear your purple in peace.
So this couple comes in together to buy an engagement ring, and they had a budget of about $20,000, which is a lot for an engagement ring. But the ring that she happened to pick out was about $35,000, which is a lot of money. And she was really adamant about picking it, and he was kind of reserved, like, you know, it is a lot of money. But she's like, no, if you love me, you'll buy it, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, you know what? You're gonna be my wife, the mother of my kids, whatever makes you happy. So after they finally decide, I pack it up for them. I'm like, here you go. Have a great marriage. Have a great life. Goodbye. About 3 weeks later, the fiance comes in, and I'm thinking she just wants to get the ring size or something. And she's like, can you guys take out the diamond and replace it with a cubic zirconium? Cubic zirconium is a very cheap substitute for a diamond. So I was like, yeah, we can do that, but just give us 2 or 3 days. So she leaves, and I call her fiance because I was like, oh, this is really suspicious. And he had no idea that she came into the shop or that she was coming in. So he calls me 2 days later, and he finds out that she was going to break up with him. She would have kept that diamond, and she would have given him the fake one. He would have returned it, and he would have gotten no money back.
The most fucked up thing that your parents ever did to you? I was 15 or 16 at the moment, and my mom and my sisters were on vacation. I was home alone with my dad, and I was really bored at home. So I asked my dad if I could go to the mall with one of my friends, and of course he told me no because I didn't have my license. So I went upstairs to my room, and I was like, whatever. So then later on, he comes knocking on my door, and he's like, hey, you can go to the mall. So I was so excited that I didn't even ask for money. I was like, wow, my dad's letting me go. So we get to the mall, and me and my friend are just like, what are we gonna do? We don't even have money. So we just sat at the food court, just staring at each other, talking. So then, of course, we went back home. So then when we pull up, I see a car that my dad has sold that was supposed to be mine so he could give me a new car was there. And I was like, what the hell? So I walk up to the front door, and I try to open the door, and there's a chain on there. So I immediately know something's off, and I'm banging on the door telling my dad to open the door for me. Come back for part. So this is part 2. Okay, so I'm banging on the door, and I'm telling him, Dad, open the door. And when the chain's on there, I could see like a little crack through there. So I could still see inside my house a little bit. So I could see past the stairs, and I just see him like walk by with like no shirt, kind of fixing his pants. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So he walks up to the door, and he tells me, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing here? It's my house. I'm here. I'm your daughter. And I was just like, what are you doing? I'm like, why is the chain on the door? I'm like, can you open the door? And he's like, no, leave. And I was like, what the So I had my suspicions on what was going on and what was happening, but I didn't. Because my mom has caught him kind of cheating before through messages. So I'm shook and I'm embarrassed because my friend is there. So we walk back to the car, and I'm like shaking. Part 3. This is part 3. So we walk back to the car, and I'm just so embarrassed, and I don't even know what to tell my friend because my dad basically kicked me out of my house for no reason. So I'm just like, girl, I think my dad's cheating. I don't know what's going on, but I think he's cheating. I think there's a woman in my house, and my mom's not here, and I don't know what to do. Let me remind you, this car was sold so I could get a new one. I literally deep cleaned this car by myself so I could get a new one. So somebody else had my car. So I'm pissed, and I'm like, I'm about to beat this whole ass. So we get in my car, and we drive around the neighborhood. It's a really small neighborhood. And we stop like 3 houses down. So I'm waiting for this lady to walk out so I could run her over. So I see my dad come out and start the car. And a few minutes later, the lady comes out. So I pull up in my minivan, and I jump out, and I run up to the car. She locked the door, and she starts speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm cussing her out in English. Sorry, come back for... This is part 4. So I'm literally standing there banging on the window of the car, telling her to get the fuck out because I'm gonna beat her ass. And she's telling me something in Spanish. I couldn't really hear her because I was really pissed. And my dad's grabbing me, telling me to calm down. So I'm like, she needs to get out this car. So I'm looking for something that I could find that I could break this window with. So I turn around, I see a brick. And by the way, my dad's outside protecting her, and she's locked up in her car. aka my car. So I grabbed the brick and I run towards him. And my dad damn near tackled me. And he took the brick out of my hand. And I'm screaming at him, telling him how could he do this? My mom loves him. And my mom's sick. And if she dies, it's his fault. And I tell him that lady's a hoe. He has the audacity to say that this lady's not a hoe. So while I'm banging on the window, my dad goes to my minivan and moves the car out of the way with my friend in there. And once he moved the car, she left.
Story time about embarrassing things that has ever happened to me in high school. So a little background information. I was in my freshman year of high school. Well, spring break was coming up. Well, the whole year, my friend and I hadn't been to one single party. So we decided that we wanted to try and go to a party every single day of spring break, which was about to be super difficult because we had to worry about my strict-ass parents and my neighbors. A little background info on my neighbor. My neighbor is this girl who's in my same grade and she literally hates my guts. I don't know why, but literally anything that I do, she'll go and she'll tell her mom and then her mom will tell my mom because my mom and her mom are best friends. But before we know it, Saturday comes around and we go back to school on Monday. We did not make it to one single party. Well, later that night, we found out that one of our friends was throwing one. So around 11 o'clock, everybody's sleeping and I walk out my back door, hop over my fence, and I start heading towards the road where my friend was going to be parked. You know, who do I see fucking sitting outside on their porch reading a fucking book? My fucking neighbor. Like for part 2.
Hey guys, just to let you know, you don't have to watch this part, and yes, there will be a black screen until I end the video, but I just want to let you all know that thank you for all the support. It means the world to me, and this is my first time making a video like this. I've never made a video like this, so please show me your support by subscribing so I can know that I need to make more videos like this. I've been watching a lot of these types of videos, and I decided to make one. I know this is really not my daily content, but I just wanted to step out of my comfort zone and do something that I usually wouldn't do. By the way, my voice does sound a little bit funny because I'm not using a microphone and I'm just so yeah. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for today, and like always, bye.